Authority meeting of Wednesday, October 2nd, 2019. Susan, a roll call, please.
Bob Gunzel. Tyler Kinley.
Here.
Rick Klopp.
Here.
Howard Lazarus. Jessica Letow. Joan Lowenstein. Here. Molly McFarland. Here. Darren McKinnon.
Present.
John Maud.
Here.
Rishi Narayan.
Here.
Keith Orr.
Here.
Phil Weiss.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Excellent. Let's start off with the agenda. We need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we have an agenda. And on that agenda, the next item is audience participation. We have two people currently signed up. Alan Haber is first. 4 minutes. That's it.
Hello again, I'm Alan Haber. I am a part of the Center of the City Task Force dealing with the implementation of Proposal A, which directs that the public lands on the center of the city block should be developed as a central park and civic center commons. I may have said this before, but in the task force it has been observed that this is really in your kind of bailiwick. And it would seem to me and others that the development of that space and liaison with the task force should be on your agenda as well. And your partnership committee should be looking at how to partner with this development in the center of the city, rather than DDA being somewhere to the side watching to see what might happen, to which you might relate to. But it would seem that some initiative and eagerness to this amazing possibility of creating something beautiful in the center of our city would be high on your agenda of creativity and interest. So I am here just to say this is an amazing opportunity for Ann Arbor to design its center, hopefully with your help and cooperation, and no doubt some of the financing that comes from the prosperity of downtown. So that is my message, that your partnership committee and your general consciousness engage the development of the center of the city as a central park and civic center commons, as we have been directed to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Next, I have Chuck. I can't read the last name. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Boltzmann.
All right,
My name is Chuck Boltzmann.
All right.
Good afternoon. I am a local architect, and I live in the Anson Brown building, which is just on the other side of the Broadway Bridge. And as such, I am considered a near neighbor, and therefore I sit on the Citizens Advisory Council, not as a voting member. But I fairly religiously attend those meetings, and as such, I have become familiar with the plans for 402 Huron Street. And I wanted to just bring something to your attention. In studying those plans a little bit, and in many conversations we have at the CAC, we talk a lot about how to actuate the street. First floor commercial. And so here we have a proposal for a hotel, which is not something that you walk down the street and say, hey honey, how about we stay in the hotel tonight? It's a destination, you know where you're going. And the first floor has no retail. Now, that may be by right, and that may not be in the purview of the DDA to actually, say, you must do this. But we, as a community, need to talk about this, because architects care about this thing, and pedestrians care about this thing, and it's not, sometimes you don't identify it. I mean, an architect would, by the way we look at things and speak, but a pedestrian won't, but they just won't go there. And so a perfectly good example is Main Street between Washington and Huron. What's there? A bunch of banks. Okay, there's a couple of restaurants, but it really is not the most vibrant section of Main Street. You are spending a bunch of money to revitalize Huron, and one of the conversations when the presentation was made to the CAC was had to do with actuating the street. And so one of my questions was, how much potential is there for storefronts? And the designers went, oh, that's a good question, we don't know. Well, here we have a new building that is being proposed that has 0 retail on the first floor. and it's a hotel. Why not put the lobby? The lobby can be shrunk down really small, and all the dining spaces that are proposed there can be put up on the second floor. Actually, a nicer place to dine, by the way. To look down on the street rather than to be eye to eye with someone who can see what's on your plate. Anyway, to the extent that this board can do something about that, I would like to ask that you consider it and put pressure on the designers, architects to find a way to make that more of a pedestrian-friendly first floor. Right now, Huron Street's pretty much a desert. I know because I walk there once or twice a day, because I walk to downtown all the time, and I avoid walking along Huron as much as possible. Thank you.
Chuck? Those are the only two signed up, but we do have slots for two others if anyone else is interested. None? Then we move on to reports from city boards and commissions. Ray Detter.
Good morning. Chuck Goldman has stated the case very clearly with regard to the Citizen Advisory Council position in relationship to the property that's going to be a hotel on the corner of Division and Huron. But last night, the CAC also talked about 212 South State and 616 East Washington, which are two related but separate projects, which include a small building that will replace the Michigan Theater bathrooms, and the other portion fronting onto Washington Street. CAC believes the developer has done a good job listening and has made changes to things like the lighting and making it more pedestrian friendly. With the owner's permission, historians Eileen Tyler and also Sue Weinberg will document the historic building this spring before it is demolished. The Standard, which is the project at Main and William, will have a new design revealed tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. at the downtown library. We urge everyone to go to that. I mean, that thing has been worked on for years. They've done a very good job, and they're making it better. That will be at 6:30 tomorrow at the downtown library. Glen Ann, mixed-use PUD, a public hearing will be on City Council's agenda at the next City Council Monday meeting. CAC has had a lot of involvement in the evolution of this project. For instance, through the efforts of CAC, a workable traffic solution was found on Ann Street. The project is much improved, but has been sitting long for quite a while. CAC also discussed 402 East Huron. It has been suggested that this hotel may be considering using residential permits in the Old Fourth Ward. CAC strongly opposes this. Pardon me. The CAC also strongly urges the developer to put an active use on the first floor, such as a restaurant. We ask the DDA take these concerns into consideration as you weigh whether to provide a parking agreement for this project. Finally, the DDA has also been asked to provide parking to the Village South project. CAC is grateful that Sean Havera, who works for Ron Hughes over on South University, has agreed to consider reinstalling the 3 historical markers that have been taken down temporarily on that. It took years to get up, and he also has committed himself that to replace those as possible on the buildings that are being constructed at South University. Given this kind of positive responsiveness, we support the DDA providing parking permits as requested for their new project. The two things do go together. You can't win the hearts of developers by providing things that they may not otherwise get. We want those 3 historic exhibits back where they were on another building, but nonetheless where they can be seen in the way in which they were intended to be seen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Take that off before it beeps. There we go. Next is DDA member communications. Normally the first thing I would do would be to recognize Jessica, but she is ill today, but she did ask me to pass this along. She does monthly downtown hall, and the first one this month will be this Saturday, October 5th, 10 to 11:30. This is the one that meets at Blake Transit Center for a walking tour of the People-Friendly Streets projects. All ages, abilities, and dogs are welcome. I think that's a new thing on her list. And then
Cats
next,
are not welcome? On a leash.
let's not get into that.
I'm anti-cat as well. So.
Let's see. And then next Wednesday is not the walking tour, but this will be at 7 to 8:30 at the Sweetwaters in Westgate Library. There's never an agenda, but talking about downtown issues. All are welcome. I doubt if dogs are welcome, however, in Sweetwaters. So, any other communications from DDA members?
Yeah, Keith.
Yes, Joe.
So last night I attended the Planning Commission meeting, and the Planning Commission approved a project, it's actually two projects, but sort of all in one, that we've been really intimately involved with, which is right behind the Michigan Theater. It doesn't have a cool name yet. It's just 212 South State and 616 East Washington. But you may remember we've been working for a long time, particularly Susan and our staff have been really working with them to talk about trash issues, and they've incorporated a lot of the suggestions that we made and have worked with the surrounding areas so that, for instance, there's going to be a central interior trash collection, and the Starbucks and Saba's, all those buildings can not have to put their trash out on the street and can do it as an interior kind of thing. And the most important is that they're going to be, this is the first time that we're going to see some affordable units. So in there, they have a low-rise building and then a high-rise building. The low-rise, which is the 212 South State, that one they are going to have, I think that one also has 19 units in it, but they're going to be micro units. So they're not going to have to be regulated as affordable, but just by virtue of their being tiny, mostly studios, these are going to be more affordable. And in the high rise, they are taking advantage of the affordable premium. So they're going higher than they're going to have a planned project instead of just the by right development. They're taking advantage of the premium and for affordable. So they were, I think that also had 19 units of affordable at 80%, which is what the ordinance requires. One of the planning commissioners asked that couldn't they be even more affordable, like 60%? And they actually came right up and said, yeah, we can do that. So they're going to make 1/3 of those, so 6 units are going to be at 60% AMI. And then the other approximately 9 units or something. Anyway, whatever's left, they're going to be at the 80% AMI. So this is a really good experiment for us in the downtown to see what it looks like to have these affordable premiums being used. And that should be kind of interesting. So I think, there were some people from the public who objected to the extra height, but it really was a minority, and most people are in agreement that this is going to be a good thing. Of course, Russ Collins was there, a former colleague here, because they're also building restrooms onto the Michigan Theater to alleviate the problem that the Michigan Theater has with not being up to code on their restrooms. So that was kind of an exciting thing to see, and so now it'll go on to, it was passed at Planning Commission, now it's gonna go on to council. Also, the Planning Commission looked at something that may or may not affect us. Really, it's a proposed new zoning district called T1, which is a transit corridor overlay kind of district. And these are districts that are proposed with some of the things we've talked about for a long time, particularly parking maximums instead of parking minimums. So along transit corridors, this would encourage mixed use, it would have to be mixed use development. You know, now the way most of our zoning is residential is permitted in certain areas, but this would mandate mixed use in this particular zoning category. And there would be no height limit, and they would have parking maximums instead of parking minimums. There are a lot of other categories, but so this would be, for instance, like around where Arbor Land and Arbor Hills are on Washtenaw, potentially somewhere down Packard. It's really meant for a real transit corridor area. And there was this was just a public hearing. They didn't have any vote on it. They tabled it. They'll vote on it at a later time. But it's a really interesting thing, I think, for us to watch as we encourage transit getting into the downtown.
Great. Thank you, Joan. That's very exciting, something we have all talked about quite a bit. And as we all know, a lot of the answers revolve around zoning. So it's exciting that they're looking at that. Any other DDA member communications? All right, seeing none, we move on to Susan. That's it? Move on to Susan, Executive Director Communications.
So I have a few things just to make sure they're on your calendar. The first is a week from Monday, which is the 14th. We have our annual work session with City Council, where by parking contract, we'll talk about parking. But the last couple of years, we've broadened it, so once we do the reporting, it's really a chance to talk about other areas of common shared interest, for instance, affordable housing. The reuse of some of the parking lots downtown, like 415 and the old Y lot, for things like affordable housing. So I urge you all to come. It'll be at 7 o'clock at CTN. We'll try to have an agenda and materials out to you well in advance, but I really urge you to come and participate. And then the other is to welcome you to a celebration, taking away the thunder from my colleague Maura, on the 27th, which is a Sunday between 2 and 4. We will be celebrating the first protected bikeway in Ann Arbor. And there are a lot of jam-packed activities planned. I can't do them justice, so you'll get a chance to see it. But it'll be fun. Ribbon cutting is something we traditionally do with every one of our big projects, so this is a fun one to put on your calendar. We're asking council for a road closure. It's coming in last minute, because of course construction is always last minute. So assuming they approve it, we'll have that in place, and if not, we'll figure out some other strategies. But meet us between 5th and Division on William, between 2 and 4 on Sunday the 27th. Thanks very much.
Who gets to cut the ribbon? Keith? Laura?
Mayor.
Mounted.
Yes,
Scissors on a
they-
plate. Trying to fight through with that cutter.
Yeah.
We'll hold the lottery.
You can wear your hard hat, though.
That's true, we can dig those out. Let's see, next is approval of minutes, which are in your package, pages 3 through 15. Do I have a motion to approve them?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we have some minutes. Subcommittee reports. Let's start off with the Operations Committee. Phil?
All right, that's me. The first thing I'd like to do for the Operations Committee is move a resolution of support for a parking contract with the 402 East Huron Street development. I think we're calling this the Huron Hotel.
Do we have a second? Second.
Thank you.
Discussion. Phil?
For those of you not familiar, without reading the whole resolution, the developer, which is Mortensen Development, is proposing a 9-story, 160-room hotel, which will pursue a Gold LEED certification and will include a public plaza along Huron Street. It's the corner of Huron and Division where the Firestone shop is now. And so this motion, or this resolution, is to provide 27 off-peak parking limits, parking permits in the Liberty Square or Maynard parking structures, with their first choice being Liberty Square. Also, as part of this resolution, the Operations Committee also recommends that as part of this agreement, the developer be asked to modify its design so that the Division Street sidewalk width would be increased from the minimum of 9 to 10 feet as currently required to an optimal 14 feet, which is similar to the sidewalk widths installed throughout downtown by the DDA through its street improvement projects. So two parts of this, the parking permits and the width of the sidewalk, which the developer has proposed along Division.
Discussion?
So based on our discussion at executive committee and talking with staff about ongoing discussions, I wanted to propose an amendment to the final whereas clause, which changes 3 words, for the most part, maybe more than that. But the recommends in the first line will become the word requires. And at the beginning of the second line, the to be asked to is stricken. And in the third line, the phrase "and optimal" is also stricken. So,
All right, we need a second for the amendment. Any second? Second. Discussion on the amendment.
I was actually going to ask this question about what validity does it, like, what was the recourse if they say no, and then so I think it needs to be, or it sounds like it needs to be a requirement so that we could actually enforce it, or not require it, but to have it in here as is.
And what we heard from what we heard from Amber was, as it's written now, the developer kind of looked at that as it's required, but we wanted to strengthen that language to make it sound like we agree that it's required.
Perfect. Great. So all good.
Any other discussion on the amendment?
So tell me the 3 spots again. Recommends
I'm
goes
going to read the revised.
Sure.
So it'll read, whereas the Operations Committee also requires that as part of this agreement, the developer modify its design so that the Division Street sidewalk width would be increased from the minimum 9 to 10 feet as currently required to 14 feet. The rest is unchanged.
Any further discussion on the amendment? All in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so now back to the resolution itself as amended. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor of the resolution of support for a parking contract with the 402 East Huron Street Development, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
Okay, I have another resolution similar to the first, but this resolution of support is for a parking contract with the 116 South University Development, commonly referred to now as Vic Village South. And for those of you not familiar, this is going to be a 13-story mixed-use development, including 2 levels of below-grade parking, which will provide 66 parking spaces and an additional 4 parking spaces provided behind the building at grade level. The project will also include 14 affordable units to sort of piggyback on what Joan was talking about earlier. This is the site of, I think it's a former PNC bank, correct? Corner of South U and
East U.
East U.
Thank you.
It's more than just a PNC. It's like 4 buildings.
Okay. All right.
Former underground printing.
Thank you for
Yeah.
that.
But it does help.
Annoyingly, yeah.
But it does help us geolocate it.
Yes.
So what
Tell you
we're doing,
firsthand.
what we're doing today is recommending approval of an agreement with the developer to provide 40 off-peak monthly parking permits in the Forest Garage. So that's the resolution before you today. And Pat Fix, I believe is your last name,
That's
is
right.
here from the developer in case we have any questions or further discussion.
Oh, sorry. First, we need a second.
I'm sorry.
Second? All
Sorry.
right. Go ahead.
I have a question, kind of based on what our Downtown Citizens Advisory Council chairman reported. I don't want to muddy the waters, but do we want to add language in here about reinstalling historical markers? I don't know who I'm asking that to. to. Maybe I'm asking Ray. I don't know if this is even the right location. I'm just trying to be responsive. But there was,
Same development, that's on,
but there was discussion about mounting them on a different building, right?
It's on the north, actually. So we've just finished up construction, right? So that you can contact Sean and we'll, we can get with you about getting those remounted.
Sounds like a no.
Okay, so the
I
building is
talked to them
finished.
earlier.
It's actually, those are going to be on the Vic Village South building, which is the one that was completed to open this year.
Vic Village South, on the
North.
north side of the
I'm
street?
sorry, north. Vic Village North.
This is south.
You should
This
give
is
them
south.
different names so we wouldn't get so confused.
So I think the answer is no, don't worry about it. Is that correct, Ray? Okay.
That's fine.
If Ray's comfortable with it.
Right.
Yeah.
We knew where they were going to go, except after committing to that,
Right.
there's been no communications.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I apologize for that. The building is complete. You can certainly contact Sean. You have his number.
Okay.
And, we can make arrangements to have that done as soon as possible.
Thank you.
No problem.
Excellent.
That's all I have.
Okay, any other questions? As I indicated when I went before the Operations Committee, the only reason that we're here in front of you is because it's required by ordinance that we have all these parking spaces. We are not in favor of providing parking for the students, okay, for the very simple reason I don't think we should encourage students to bring their cars to campus, okay, and I don't really think it's necessary. Vic Village North has 0 parking, and we're 98% leased, and as of this morning, we're 64% leased for next year, okay, or pre-leased because we can't officially lease yet, by the city ordinance. So it's not necessary, so I don't know what sway this body has with the city about minimizing.
We appreciate you subsidizing our parking system, though.
Yes. And
We would like more developers to pay for it and not use it.
well, yeah, I know, it's unfortunate, but it is an expense which does result in, higher rents to the students because it is an expense that we do have to absorb. And you're correct, we're not using it. 2 of them are being used by our pizza place that is a tenant in the building. And, you were asking about somebody brought up about the tenants that are on the south side of the street. PNC Bank is relocating to north. Underground Printing is relocating to north. And the Oasis Grill is relocating to, is where the old China Gate was. And we're in the process of building that space out now. So basically, the existing tenants are still going to be on South University. It's just that they are going to be relocated. So, any other questions? Thank you.
And I guess just to note, on the parking ones that are doing are the off-peak parking, which we do have plenty of.
Yes, correct.
Even though the rest of
40 off-peak, yes.
our parking can be stressed at times, the off-peak is not at all, so.
Is there any movement or any change or any further discussion about this zoning issue for parking, or is it just something we keep talking about if nothing is happening?
City Council work session, October 14th.
Well, zoning has to approve that, isn't that correct? And they're not going to be at the work session.
Right.
Yeah, the way it would work is we've raised it before, and I think it's really the appropriate place to bring it back, saying, and we're hearing now from developers that they're not using it. And what council could be asked to do is to assign this to planning commission and direct them to make this change in the ordinance that would then come back to city council. So it's in their authorization to direct planning commission to come back with recommended language.
Marie, it is not required per zone to provide any parking. The reason the parking gets come in is because of the premiums.
Okay.
So if you follow base zoning and do a by right project with no premium, you don't have to build any parking, you don't have to sign up any contracts. It's because of the premium building area that most developers seek where that comes into play.
And that's a planning commission.
If you're looking to change zoning and eliminate that requirement, you go through planning commission.
All right. Any further discussion on this resolution? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that one passes. Back to you, Phil.
Okay, we're about halfway through the operations committee. And Ashley expansion and improvements update. Council rejected the first floor customer service office, DDA office, and public meeting room at their last meeting. So next Monday on October 7th, City Council will be asked to approve the Ann Ashley expansion and improvement project without the offices and meeting rooms. So we're going to ask again for more parking. We don't know for sure what we're going to hear, but most indication, correct me if I'm wrong, is we're going to get a hard no. And
We don't know that.
we don't know that.
We don't know
It's
that.
we're speculating. Assuming we get a hard no, that leads me into my next topic, which, if we're not spending this money for the Ann Ashley expansion, the operations committee would like to bring back to the table the discussion of the Maynard parking office. We're not asking for any votes or any decisions to be made today, but if the city does say no, we'd like to re-bring the conversation to the table about helping the folks out at Republic so that Mike doesn't have to go to the bathroom at Cottage Inn.
Just a minute. So you're saying if the council says no to Ann Ashley expansion for the parking, then you want to talk about that?
I've wanted to talk about this all along,
Right.
but in lieu of not spending the money on Ann Ashley, I think it's prudent to bring this issue back to the table and to set a budget of X.
The extra
or-
money that we were asking for to increase that budget for Ann Ashley.
I think more specifically, though we're asking for bonding, there's a lot of our budget not bonded that's going to it, and this will free up that money if we indeed get a hard no. And what Phil is asking is that let's have the discussion, and part of that discussion would be about how to use that money for this. Rishi?
So in, being that Susan said it's not for sure, so if,
Right.
if it were not a hard, if it were a yes, I just wanted to ask the question, does finance / operations think that we could afford the build out of the office outside of the bond?
I think that's
Is that like-
the
has that been
discussion.
floated?
The discussion has to be had, I think, in whether we get a yes or a no, because it's clearly something has to be.
But, so the discussion of the going back to Maynard seems prudent if we cannot touch Ann Ashley. But if we are building on Ann Ashley, I guess there's the question of could we build the commercial space ourselves? I have no idea, but I was just curious about that before we went back completely the other way.
I think what we got from council last time is that they were not in favor of the office / commercial build out. So what's going to council this coming week is only the parking addition. And it's not, we're no longer considering the office.
We're no longer considering.
So we're already in a situation where,
we gave up the office.
Well,
well, council
said
gave us
no.
a hard no
Council
on
said
that
no.
part of it.
Not the cost part, but just the idea.
I think it was the costs.
So we're going back to council only for additional parking floors, not any kind of office
Yes.
build out for us.
So
or-
we're already are probably going to have to reconsider Maynard regardless.
Okay, and we want to consider a build out there or reopen the discussion about finding a space to lease. So I don't think that's off the table either.
I was just curious if there was a middle ground, which was like, okay, you said there was a hard note of the cost, but we can
We could
afford
put a
it.
Quonset
We
hut
could,
out there.
yeah, exactly, but apparently not, so that's. I'm not advocating for anything. I thought that was the,
And we're not advocating for anything yet either, we just want to bring it back.
there is zero advocating being done currently.
Right.
I
No
was just
speculating.
curious. This was all.
No advocating.
Yep, we'll discuss it at the next ops committee meeting. The parking and transportation report for September is in your packet. I wanted to bring Jada up for just a minute to talk a little bit about this parking equipment request for proposal that she's working on. Jada, could you give us a minute or so on that?
So at the committee meeting, I shared information about a technology change that is prompting a rather substantial equipment purchase for all of the equipment and structures. This is gates, ticket dispensers, pay and flip machines, fee computers, and the cashier booths, kind of the whole system. I have been working with Republic Parking to create an RFP We are going to get that out at the end of this week and expect to have responses back in early November. We, I think, have done a good job really expressing in the RFP the scope of the work, our expectations, and kind of some of the detaily things that are important to us as far as kind of back-end technical components as well as, you know, forward-facing customer components. I shared information about the age of our equipment. We kind of have two vintages, well, three vintages of equipment. We replaced the Fourth and William equipment in 2017 as that stair elevator project was wrapping up. The next group, if you will, is about 6 to 7 years old, and then we have a group of equipment that's 12, 13 years old. So much of our equipment, you know, the hardware especially, has been out, deployed for a long time. We've definitely gotten our money's worth from those purchases. So we will bring back to you, to the Operations Committee in November, information on the responses that we get in. If we feel like we're ready to make a choice then, we would bring something back to the board in December, approving the purchase. Since there are many structures that would need new equipment, we would work with Republic and the dealer to kind of time what makes sense for each structure based on the neighborhood uses and the length of the switch.
Yes.
Do we capitalize this equipment?
We do not. We don't capitalize anything in our funds. The city does. Any assets that of the parking structure, the city capitalizes. So they report those as assets on their books.
So do we then plan for obsolescence in the money that goes financially
As part of
accounted
the
for?
parking
It
maintenance fund?
is, that's the parking maintenance fund, yes.
Thanks, Jada. Okay, then the next committee meeting for the Operations Committee is October 30th at 11 a.m.
All right. Thank you, Phil. And now, just to change voices, we go to Finance Committee and Phil.
I joked with Keith earlier, my whole Finance Committee update was going to be this. There's a new sheriff in town, folks. Her name's Sarah McKell. Sarah shared a bunch of new reports with pretty colors and stuff and new formats with us at the Operations Committee. I believe they're in the Finance Committee.
She was loved by 17 paper?
No disrespect to our former finance director at all. And I wanted to move a resolution, which is on page 22 of your packet, approving the purchase of BS&A accounting software. Sarah, you can come to the podium if you'd like. I'll do a little overview. We currently use software called Blackbaud, which is no longer going to be supported as of January 1st. We have many problems with this software, including that it doesn't provide standardized report templates. The new software company, BS&A, their customers are mostly municipalities. Blackbaud has few municipal clients. BS&A is user-friendly, provides government-based reporting templates with flexibility to customize as needed. Should I keep going, or am I stealing your thunder?
You're doing great. You're doing great.
The City of Ann Arbor uses the new company BS&A for some aspects of its accounting system. Sarah has worked with BS&A before, says they're very responsive and their customer support is great. So we are being asked to approve this resolution, and I guess I spoke too soon. I probably need a second.
Second.
Thank you. Would you like to expound on what I've already said?
Sure. The version of Blackbaud that we're using currently is about 20 years old design-wise. They've rolled out a new product a couple of years ago, and they'll stop supporting the one that we have now as of December 1st, as Phil said. The software itself appears to me, and in conversations with Blackbaud, to be designed primarily for nonprofits. A little bit different than governments. They do have government clients, but BS&A, the advantage that that software has, as I see it, is it's specific to governments. They have the market share, the lion's portion of the market share for government units in the state of Michigan. They started in Bath, Michigan. Still have their operations there. Very solid company. the best customer support I've ever experienced in any software anywhere. So that says a lot. Still growing. They are now expanding outside of Michigan, doing very well. They seem to retain their employees. They're extremely responsive timing-wise. They also implement changes in a very quick manner when they find something that's not working. So altogether, I've had 16 years experience with BSNA and just love the product.
The other thing that I'll add is that we looked at 2 bids, a bid from each company. I couldn't follow the Blackbaud bid. The numbers were, it was like reading Greek to me. And I couldn't figure it out.
You're a banker.
Yeah. I couldn't figure it out. It was worse than the loan agreement.
Sorry, that was good. And then we yeah. I'm not sure if that's on Blackbaud or on you, Bill.
I felt the same way, I have to say, when I got there.
Yeah.
I did follow up with a conversation with them, and you'll see in your packet that I did put together a little comparison. One of the differences is BSNA sells their software outright. It would be installed on our server, we would own the software, and then we pay annual support as per usual. Blackbaud, their new system is a cloud-based system. So we no longer purchase the software, so there's not that cost up front, but we pay more per year to use the software. And so it's a little bit, it's not apples and apples to, to compare that. So I did a little several years out comparison so you could kind of see the difference in price. Since I got those numbers from BSNA, I went back to them and asked, when they were putting the quote together, they asked for our annual revenues, and I gave them those numbers. But because we're actually a fairly simple design for our accounting, and because Republic manages much of the activities of the organization, I felt like that number might be a little high. And he did come back with a lower number late Friday. And so instead of the 43 that you see there, we're now down to, 35.7. So a little, about 17% less than you're seeing there even. So altogether, the annual cost is about 26% less with BSNA. And this is something
I'm sorry,
that
what was that number again? 37?
37,685.
So we'll have to change the resolution to reflect that.
I believe it's the one not to exceed.
It is, yeah.
Oh, I see, not to exceed. Okay, thank you.
That way.
My fault.
And I did discuss this with the auditors when they were here. I wondered if they had familiarity with either one of the programs. They had one client who has, the folks that were here, one client that was on Blackbaud, and that client does not like Blackbaud, was their commentary there. BSNA they're familiar with, and they find it user-friendly enough that when they come into a client's office, they can actually access the records directly from the software, which I think is a huge thing. It's, great, great visibility, and their just efficiency as well.
Sarah, besides with the auditors, I was wondering if there's any interaction with the software that Republic uses?
Not at this time, and I think in talking to Mike, that's something they've been looking at is replacing their software. So we might see if that could happen down the road. One of the other advantages that I'm aware of with BSNA is they're really good about customizing things. Some of their larger clients, they do some customized reports and exports and that kind of thing. So there's possibility that could be done. Question.
I was just going to say kudos because this is the highest level of analysis I've seen for a $45,000 expenditure, and this is awesome. And I'm ready to go back to the finance committee now because of this.
See all those pretty reports?
No, this is really, truly, this is awesome, and obviously it's all well laid out, and there's zero questions. So this is really good.
Thank you.
Congrats.
And it covered.
It was a good meeting. It was really informative and helpful, and I think the case is very, very clear to go with the SNA.
Yeah, 100%.
Before she squeezed him.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, I've seen many a resolution for a dollar amount more than this with no backing at all, and I think we've had some commentary about it, but this is no matter the dollar amount, this is the level of analysis and squeezing and whatnot that needs to happen, and I think that's great. So, awesome.
I believe the city website, if you look up properties, that almost certain BSNA software runs that. So the city's
yes.
already using them for other things, so there might
Yes.
be
Their
other
assessment.
benefits. Yeah.
Assessment.
Tax and
Yes.
assessing like that.
So I don't know if that affects us directly, but at least there's already a relationship there with the city.
It's true.
to say.
Any further discussion? All right. All in favor of the resolution to purchase accounting software, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
It'd be funny if I voted no after that.
No, it wouldn't.
I would have liked a little more color.
All right,
Pie chart in the back.
a couple other quick things with finance. We did review the fiscal year 19 revenue and expenditure reports. Sarah provided an update letting us know that the audit work had been done, and we expect the report when? Sarah?
I have a draft now.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I received a draft late last week, so that hadn't happened when the
Okay,
Finance
thanks.
Committee met. So I'll be reviewing that the rest of this week and get that back to the auditors. They will be coming to the next Finance Committee meeting to present the audit.
Okay. Thank you. And that meeting is October 31st at 1 p.m. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Phil. Our next committee reports are not Phil. It's Jessica and Molly, but Jessica's not here, so I assume it's Molly who's taking this on.
You are correct. Okay, so the big thing today is talking about some of the updates on projects, and I'm going to lean on Amber and Liz if you guys have any questions, but I'll do my best. So let's start with 5th and Detroit. So this is the big brick issue fix that we're working on. Staff met with city project manager and contractor to confirm the brick delivery. One big point that when I was talking to Amber about this that we want to make sure is clear is we're being very cautious about anything in these updates that have to do with timing or quality or exactly when they're be installed, because we can only do what we can do, and we had issues with them last time, so we're waiting until we see the brick actually delivered, can check out the quality of the brick and actually see it installed before we're locking into any deadlines. But I'll give you the updates as we know them right now. The brick supplier has confirmed that all the replacement brick and a contingency quantity has been made, so we do have extra brick. First brick delivery is expected tomorrow, October 3rd, and will be delivered to the city facility. If the brick actually arrives tomorrow, we plan to begin installation, or the contractor plans to begin installation on Monday. We are watching things like rain to see if that causes any delays. Installation is planned to begin on the westernmost lane of 5th Avenue and work east to Detroit Street. And the city DDA are pushing for a tight schedule. The contractor is estimating 2 weeks. Amber also made sure to call out there that weather would be a factor there, but we're estimating to get it done in that time period. And we're requesting that Detroit Street remain open for parking and access through all the work on 5th Ave. So that's update number 1. Huron. So concrete work and pavers are substantially complete on the south side. New street lights are being installed. I did confirm with Amber and Liz today that all the parts that have been received, so we're moving forward there. Restoration continues between Main Street and Chapin Street on the north side. Due to weather, site conditions, and DTE coordination delays, the decision was made to postpone a more complicated section on the north side between 5th Ave and Main until spring. So basically there's one section that includes vaults and utility issues. If we tried to tackle that now, it might mean lane closures for the season because we can't keep paving. So we decided to postpone that. That way those lanes can be open and the remaining sections can be done by mid-November. Did I say that right, Amber? Okay.
Whoever made that call, good call.
Yeah. Agreed.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
Have we heard anything about the Hawk being replaced officially yet?
Wait, let me guess.
I can guess, but you know.
We have not heard anything officially, and I can't remember the update that was shared at the last meeting, but you all received a copy of letters that were written by residents of Lurie Terrace.
Mm-hmm.
They received a response from MDOT that said they are going to be doing a study this fall, because while we have data, MDOT likes to do their own study. And in the meantime, they will increase the walk time on the Hawk signal. What we've heard back from Lurie Terrace residents is that will not solve the problem. So they plan on doing another letter writing campaign. So you'll likely see letters, again, putting more pressure on MDOT. But they got a response, so it's effective.
Kudos to them.
Mm-hmm.
Amber, while you're up, I have a quick question. So they're moving really good on the south side of Huron. I've noticed there's some vac trucks and big piles of rocks. That looks like they're having some sort of issue. Just curious.
I'm not aware of an issue.
Okay.
So in order to clear out the tree beds and the tree pits to put in nice soil for the trees, they clear out
They're backing it.
what is existing.
Got
So
it.
that's what they're backing out.
Mostly big, large rocks, apparently.
Yes, so they're preparing for planting.
Okay. They're vacuuming up large rocks.
Great.
You wonder why our trees downtown don't grow.
Because they don't grow in rock, apparently.
Got it.
All right, cool. So William Street. The asphalt leveling course, so that's the second layer, is complete between Division and Main. This week, the contractor is installing the concrete curbed islands for the bikeway intersections. The asphalt wearing course, which is the final level, is scheduled late this week, early next week. I keep writing down rain everywhere, so that's on the rain, of course. Also, a side note, and this is something that Jessica brought up. She found out that the library has released an RFP to add a cafe at the corner of 5th and William, which has been inspired by the installation of the bikeway. So just a cool, tertiary thing to see is happening because of the project that we're working on. So that's it for updates. The next committee meeting will be, at the next committee meeting, we will see a First and Ashley design update and discuss the capital improvement plan and our future plan projects. Next committee meeting is Wednesday, October 16th. Oh, hi, sorry, Rishi.
I'm late to the game, I know, and I apologize, but I just walked on 5th of Detroit like a week ago, and it is an awesome pedestrian experience. So I know everyone, just in case you're not tired of hearing the kudos on it, it's awesome. I loved it. I felt so safe. It was quick and easy. So great job to everybody that was involved in that. It was good. So anyway.
You never get tired of hearing it.
No.
Okay, I was just checking. And then I was like, what's up with this brick? Why is it so bad? No, it was good. It was great.
Before we move on,
I
another
have
question?
a quick question. The First and Ashley project, does that require bonding? Is that part of the bond that we're waiting on?
The answer is no. We have already secured that bond. Ann and Ashley is a completely separate project. We secured the bond, I think, last summer.
Yeah,
So
that's
we've got
part
the
of
funds in
the
hand.
bike lane bond, right?
Yeah,
Right.
Fifth
William
Division,
Street.
William,
Yeah.
and Ashley. So we already have those funds in hand.
There is one little complication because it was assuming that parking structure would move forward too for one piece.
The garage has a
Oh, that's
lot of
right.
benefits associated with it. It's, we describe it as an expansion, but it's really also an improvement project. And one element is it will bring, because it's an expansion, it's triggering the need for a fire hydrant, so we'll need a fire hydrant. That in turn is triggering the need to expand the water main. So we're adding to the quantity of water mains in the area west of Main Street that'll be more sizable. So it's benefit to our whole plan for First and Ashley's to set the stage for future development. And at least one piece of it, the Ann Ashley is contributing.
Susan, if we don't build Ann Ashley at all, will we still need that water main?
Yeah, I don't believe it would be required, but I think it's a question that we'd like to bring back to capital improvements. If there aren't funds going to the garage, what other funds do you want to bring back to First and Ashley to make it a more substantial project? Because we really pushed capital improvements to work within a budget, and it wasn't easy, and there were a lot of choices and priorities that were made. But I think it is worth bringing back things like that water main, because again, the goal of this is to encourage those future residences, those future commercial spaces and hotel rooms. And if the Ann and Ashley isn't going to be how we find those funds, maybe we find funds elsewhere. It is that important, as is the fire hydrant.
Right. Indeed, there were several things cut from Ann Ashley in order to make it work.
Oh, the Ashley first?
I mean, First and Ashley,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. But no, I think the question is really valid, and depending on what happens with the garage, it is an improvement that that section of downtown would really benefit from.
And speaking from experience, water mains are a big deal. If you've ever been through the entitlement process with the City of Ann Arbor, you almost always get forced into doing expensive water projects well off of the property, which take time and money and energy away from the main project. I think as a DDA, doing water mains in the downtown is certainly to help all forms of development.
And I guess a related piece to it is too, if it happens that the Ann Ashley project is rejected, then theoretically does free up some dollars that could be shifted over to this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think it just, as Susan says, I think it's going to be worth someone reanalysis of the whole
And
situation.
we'll tap capital improvements, but also, I'm looking at Phil, we're going to tap finance committee because a lot of the planning has been around substantial projects. And I think this is something maybe those two committees could share, which is what would we want to see as the next step.
When does that
After
project
we have more certainty,
We have to
which
wait
is
till
after,
Monday.
right,
Yeah.
which is
Monday.
after next Monday, we'll have more certainty on that. And at that point, obviously, these are the committees that would need to address, lots of things we have to address, which we've already talked about, some of them, Republic space.
When are we scheduled
The
to start?
executive committee report will touch another.
So we're going to begin with the beginning of the construction season next spring, and it's estimated to take at least a couple of years. Back to Ann and Ashley's a little bit on the scheduling. Monday's important. We want to get approval, but it's important that we get 8 votes. 6 are what are needed to get the bond advertised, but at some point, 45 days later, after the 45-day wait, council is going to be asked to approve going to market and also amending our budget so that we can accept those funds. We haven't planned. Ann and Ashley was supposed to happen last year. Remember that quick site plan process that actually didn't go very quickly? The funds were there for a budget that we've since passed. So we have to come back to council and amend our budget, and that's 8 votes. So Monday, we really are asking them to get a substantial number of council members in support of this project, because then you have to wonder why in 45 days we could come back and get the approval for the budget amendment. So I'm ever hopeful. I think it's an excellent project. I think the Ann and Ashley gives us a chance to make improvements in that whole neighborhood, and it also helps us set the stage for the next wave that will be coming at some point down the road. And in my mind, it's tied with things like water main. We're making a significant investment in infrastructure in anticipation of higher, better uses on property. The garage seems to fit with that. So I'm hopeful we can answer questions and meet any needs that people have. Thanks. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Move on to Partnerships Economic Development Committee. Tyler.
Yeah, so over here. This was my first partnership committee as chair, so woo, I was excited and I am excited. It was basically sort of a meeting of 2 parts. The first part was new and different. The second part was our normal update. The first part, basically, it was a bit of taking what we had done as a partnerships committee and stepping back and talking about what we do. And it sort of answered or tried to discuss 5 questions, sort of who's at the table, who should be at the table that might not be, what, as in like what are we doing, what do we want to talk about, what have we talked about that's good, what has been missing, why, as in why are they coming, what benefits have people and partners come and received, and what benefits would they like to get in the future. We actually did talk about where, because we've discussed the potential for off-site visits to some sites that have been of interest, namely 415 West Washington, the Y Lot, etc. When, meaning people did find interest, everyone was really engaged, and right now, it's basically every other meeting is with the partners, and then the other one is with DDA only. We did receive feedback that they want to keep it that way. They don't want to bump it to every month, and that's what adds value. So it was a really good meeting. Coming out of it, basically, as chair, I facilitated discussion more than tried to lead us in any direction, and we got a lot of good feedback. Everyone liked coming. People wanted to invite new people, like University of Michigan, Destination Ann Arbor, the CVB Spark. I think it was interesting to have Alan come. He could be one that could be invited at a at a later date, but that we would keep that sort of every other meeting. The next one is a DDA only, and that next meeting we're going to take the feedback we received and create a bit of a document that says here are the things we're going to do, here are the things we're going to talk about, because everyone left saying we do like having additional focus on specific topics, but we also still want to come and give updates, because for a lot of people the meeting is the only time that they're sitting at the same table with all of these other partners, and being able to not only ask questions but hear the responses, give feedback, and discuss whether it's their own topics or other ones is really, really beneficial. So the second part was the updates, so I'll just provide some here, one of which I think is shocking.
Selling this hard.
Yeah.
Coming soon.
Now tell me you had 17 color charts at your meeting. And
I'm colorblind. No color. The regional so the AAATA was there. They proposed the D2A2, which is regional transit between Ann Arbor and Detroit, but they don't know if that's going to be included in the state budget. So it's just been proposed, which would be pretty cool. The AAATA is also providing funds to the neutral zone to have a social worker at the Blake Transit Center, which was just a really cool thing. And they're buying new buses, so they're going to have much more visibility for the drivers. They have a better turning radius, and they have improved bike racks, meaning I think more than just one. They can have additional bikes on there. So mobility. From the city, they are currently working on their ordinance to regulate recreational marijuana dispensing. If you've watched any of the recent council meetings, that's a big discussion point. They asked us for input, and we just discussed it with all the partners there. The contracts for the Lower Town mobility study and for the discussion around 415 West Washington were approved, so that was pretty much what we heard from the city. From the DDA side, we provided a bunch of updates sort of on what we were trying to accomplish and what we're going to try to accomplish with Ann Ashley and with the street projects. And then finally, from the library, their online reservations are available for meeting rooms at all library locations using one's library card to reserve the space. This is something that for them has just been a huge hit and success, and they're getting reservations all the time. So it's just an interesting side note. The library thanked the AAATA for its collaboration efforts on the summer games, noting the top code for that summer game was for the participants was the one on the ATA buses. And then finally, they're getting rid of the Dewey Decimal System.
That's the shock.
That was the shocker, and that has been met with severe opinions across the board. Yeah, so Josie was as effusive in talking about the level of interest that people have.
Where does Josie come down on the Dewey Decimal? Pro or
She
con?
pro Dewey or
She has seen
419.81.
She has seen a marked increase in people's use of the library book system with their new non-Dewey Decimal system. But
wow, I was not expecting that to be the answer.
Yeah,
That's why it's
it's
shocking.
categorical now.
Let's go metric. Let's do it.
Yeah, but she said librarians across the
What's
world
what's
are-
next? No Robert's Rules of Order? Is that what we're saying?
I know. Well, that was
No. Acid dog.
Mass hysteria.
So that one was a shocker. So
Yeah, wow.
Lastly, the next partnerships committee meeting is Wednesday, October 23rd. So come, it's fun, talk about stuff.
And that's later than usual.
Yeah, that's later.
All right. Thank you, Tyler. Executive Committee, as usual, we met an hour before the board meeting. We reviewed the agenda, as we always do. We also began a discussion about the DDA's office location. Since our lease is going to be coming up, that was one of the reasons we were looking at the building over at Ann Ashley, was it would answer a whole bunch of different questions, that being just one of them. But since that isn't going to happen, the lease is scheduled to expire July 2021. We just began the discussion, and so that's going to continue in the future. Our next executive committee is November 6th, which is the next board meeting, and once again, 1 hour before at 11 a.m. And new business. Does anyone have any new business?
I probably should have mentioned this in DDA member updates, but Susan and I are on a steering committee for Washtenaw 2030, and we had a meeting yesterday. You weren't there, right?
I wasn't able to.
Okay, I was just making sure. I was like, I don't think I saw you.
Where was she?
Yeah. So, reason for mentioning it is Washtenaw 2030 is Destination Ann Arbor's, formerly the CVV's plan for 2030 and what that might look like. They're tasked a consulting firm to interview lots of stakeholders. They have a citizen survey on their website, which is washtenaw2030.org, I believe. Anyway, the reason I bring it up here is because there is a vision building event. I don't remember what it's exactly. It's vision building on the 27th. Do you remember? 27th, I believe. And they're looking for people in the community to participate. And I was like, I should. If you're interested in this, especially for us on the board, let me know, and I'll connect you to the person at Destination Ann Arbor that's sending out invites and such. So that's about it.
All right. Cool. Any other new business? Or communications, I guess. Seeing none, we do have audience participation at the end of our meetings as well. People have an opportunity to speak up to 4 minutes.
Just one communication that something wasn't mentioned that I think everybody should know about. Reminder that November 5th, there's a AAAPS that has a bond issue on the ballot for $1 billion to improve their infrastructure. So I hope you guys remember that yourself and communicate that to other people as you go forward. I mentioned that because your next meeting is after that date, so I hope everybody can get out and vote.
Thanks.
Excellent. Anyone else? All right. So with that, wow, 1:07. We had a lot of stuff. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. And a support. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?